Thank you very much for attending and watching Worldwide Slot Car Chat episode 40. We are officially over the hill now, but hopefully things will continue to get better, or at least stay as good as they have been for the last 35 videos. The first few are a little hard to get through, but they got better quick. So as usual, I like to start off with everybody doing a show and tell. So this is not what I was talking about earlier. This is, do you have a new model? Do you have a new project? Do you have a new car? Do you have a new tool or toy or any kind of thing like that? So if anybody has anything they want to show and tell, now is the time to do it. And I'll keep my eye open for people raising their hand. Paul, do you want to talk about your thing? Go ahead.
I've just built that as a it's going to be a camera stand for the Scalextrics camera control tower or TV tower, what they call it. And it's basically to cover a leg that comes out from the track and splits the scenery, and it looks horrible. So I thought, bosh, build that, cover it, camera tower on top, sorted. So my granddaughter says it's decking for a doll's house, but no, it's not. It's going on my track.
It's decking
that's an old saying in when you're designing for renovations. You find a fault, make a feature.
Yeah.
and it is decking for dolls, except they're 1/32 scale dolls, and they don't have arms. So it looks like balsa.
Some nice Scalextric poles going up with the two little men on it, and
it looks like you made it out of balsa. Is that balsa wood or basswood or something?
That's balsa wood, and those are Costa coffee and McDonald's stirrers.
There you go.
Different sizes. Before lockdown, I rubbed them blind.
I was gonna say, did you go in and take a bunch?
Yeah, basically. And I think they're on the gantry. I built all the roofing, planking that goes across the roof. That's all done about it, and all the side of it, for the uprights. That's used on that as well. And I've kept the little loops on the bottom.
Do you happen to have Do you happen to have a picture of the thing that it's covering up somewhere?
I might do. I'll find it in a minute. It's probably be on my phone.
Okay.
And it's horrible.
Yeah. Some unsightly thing on the track that you want to cover up with something more decorative and appropriate. What else are you going to do to that? Are you going to stain it? Yeah.
It's going to be stained. I don't know what color though. Brown. Everything's brown on the layout. All the fences are brown, so it's going to be plain brown.
And then
that's what I used to paint the fences in the garden with.
There you go. And some stairs and some railings and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, it's going to have railings all around it. I've just got the magnet racing footbridge to. I'm chopping that down to put the stairs onto the gantry, because the gantry comes from the pit lane and goes across the whole track. What it is gantry covers my timing beams for the TrackMate system. So I thought, rather than have just a stupid piece of thing, I built myself a gantry. And I would go and get it, but it's raining out there, cats and dogs, and I'm not going to go up the garage now.
That's fine. Take some pictures and show us later, with the screen share or something like that. Yeah. And that's just kind of a note to everybody. There's nothing wrong with holding stuff in front of a camera. And sometimes screen sharing can be a little tricky, but a nice picture, a screen shared picture, even if it's a model that there are already nice pictures of, seeing a picture of your model on your track or in your hand or whatever it is, that's always fun. So taking some pictures and then doing a screen share is just as good as holding it up in front of the camera, or however you want to.
I would look for it on Facebook, but I can't remember how you said go into Facebook.
Don't worry about
it. I got that picture up once, didn't I?
You did. We'll practice some more later and get you being a screen sharing whiz for future episodes. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about that?
No, that's. I mean, so the steps you said about steps going up to it on the magnet racing steps. I'm going to copy theirs. I'm going to make a balsawood. I'm going to use theirs as a template, and it only needs to go up 5 steps. so I can do it one side and just copy.
Yeah, that's all you need to
That's
do.
it.
Yeah.
It's gonna have, as I say, it's gonna have railings around it. I've got enough railings left over from the footbridge because I'm not using the whole centre section, so I can put railings right around it now.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, definitely share updates on that in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anybody else have anything they want to share? New toy, new tool? All right, go ahead, RK.
Yeah, a little something for Paul. We were racing sideways cars the other day, and I forgot I had this one. So enjoy.
Oh wow.
Oh.
Needs more yellow.
Yeah. Can I can't get it.
Yeah. Pull it through the screen.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
This was from 2014, another championship race here in the Philadelphia area. Another one of the special cars that Rich had made up.
You don't need it.
Yeah.
It looked good in my lot.
What we do need right now is Mike TV's Wonka Vision.
Yeah. Oh,
All right.
he makes me jealous every time.
Thanks for sharing that, RK. Does anybody else have anything they want to show and tell? Go ahead, Leo.
Right. This has intrigued me for a while. So I have a question about it. This is the Skeletric model of the Jaguar eyepiece, the electric powered Jaguar.
Mhm.
And as many of you will recognize, it has the Group 44 type livery. So Skeletric advertised this as the Heritage Edition, and Heritage Edition of the Group 4 Heritage. But I've been trying to figure out if it's based on a real car or not. So I've been searching Google, obviously, Googling mad, Bob Tullius and all these people from Group 44 organization, but I cannot find anything that indicates that this is a real car, that there's a real car this is based on. So I was hoping that some of my North American friends here might know if there is such a thing. Is there any electric car racing in the USA or Canada?
That's actually a support series to Formula E. That's a 1 week championship.
That's right. Yes.
That's all I know about the car. It's the only place I've ever seen one.
Yeah, but there's no car like this competing in that championship. The Jaguar
Not in that
Trophy,
colour scheme. No, I don't know of it.
The Jaguar Trophy. I think they basically hand out cars. The cars are produced presumably by I think it's Steyr Pusch or one of these German companies, and the cars are all equivalent, all equal in the race.
More than likely a fantasy livery.
Yeah. The only thing I can think, Skeletric have never ever produced a Group 44 car before, so it does seem a bit odd to have this Heritage Edition. But they're now producing a Jaguar XJS, which Group 44 did compete with, and I kind of wondered if this was like a prelude to the Group 44 Jaguar XJS. But,
Probably. Might have to call Simon or post on slot forum, say, hey, Simon, what's up with this livery?
Yeah, I thought about doing that, and I thought, oh, well, I'll get crazy answers. But yes, it's quite a nice car, a bit top heavy for racing in 1/32 scale, of course. But yes, I thought I'd throw that into the chat, hoping somebody would say, yes, I've seen that, but no, it looks like not. No.
Doesn't look. Nobody's jumping in.
I would think, Leo, since Group 44 hasn't been around for probably 25 years now, and the iPace is a little bit newer than 25 years old, I suspect you've just got a nice fantasy livery there that someone's put out.
Yep. All the other Skeletric versions of the eyepiece have the sort of standard Jaguar livery that is used in the Jaguar Trophy that Wayne mentioned about that's supporting the Formula E races.
Yep.
So odd, but nice. Odd but nice.
A mystery. I guess hopefully we have an answer by next week, and we can let our viewers know what the answer is. It'll probably be just fantasy livery of sorts.
Yeah, you probably see a lot of you may or may not see a lot of fantasy liveries from now on forward. Licensing agreements are getting extremely expensive. And the number of cars produced by any manufacturer worldwide is only going down. So, trying to amortize costs of licensing over fewer and fewer models. I suspect you may see some more, fantasy type stuff in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, NSR just produced a lot of fantasy liveries, haven't they? They're just re-liverying existing cars and marquee, the usual, the ones that'll sell.
Yes.
Wouldn't be a blue and yellow one, would it?
No, I didn't actually mean a Sunoco one. No, there was something came out in Martini the other day, and we all sort of went, "That never raced in that livery." That might be an ASV.
I think they're only making attractive liveries now, Paul.
Yeah.
For mugs like me.
Burn. All right. Thank you for sharing that, Leo. Hopefully we have an answer at some point soon. And does anybody else have anything that they want to show and tell before we move on to other topics? Ding, ding. Okay, go ahead, Mike. You're muted, by the way.
Okay, I got an F1, McLaren F1 Scalextric to go with my Harrods one. Nice car. I managed to convince a couple of buddies that are racing 124 scale at Malaga to come over and do some digital. And we're going to try and set up a couple of cars to do that so that the three of us have cars there. So we'll see how it goes. It'd be great for me to have somebody to race with out here.
Yeah, and yeah, just keep it simple, right? Just race for laps with lane changing. Don't like add fuel and stuff like that.
Well, actually, we've added fuel with the other guy that I raced with before COVID, and that's been a game changer. I love that.
Yeah, you love it. But you're getting 124th guys off of commercial tracks to come in and try digital.
Yeah, but they've done 132nd too, so it's not they're not neophytes.
But they're analog.
Not stuck in their ways in analog.
Oh,
so
okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah, so they're willing to give digital a try.
They're willing to give digital a try with simulation. That's the caveat that I'm going for, because it's a lot of the analog guys that I race with, they're okay with digital so long as it's just racing. Once I start tossing things like fuel and tires in there, like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Well, they got to think then.
Right. There's more brain cells to use than just trigger finger.
Yeah, for those of us that are not very good on the finger, we have to be better at the strategy. Yeah, me too.
Exactly. That's why I love it so much. It gives me a chance. Gives me a fighting chance. All right. I have that car too. It's a beautiful car. It falls into my blue and yellow category just barely because that kind of orange yellow fire effect is really cool, and it's nice blue. It's a good car. It's a nice car. What you got there, Big Den?
Well, a couple of new old things. Here's I managed to dredge out an original a Mabuchi FT13UO in its original box. How's the focus there?
It's not the greatest, but I think your camera is just not the greatest.
Yeah, that's probably right. It's an old laptop.
Is that a 13 or a 16?
Yeah, it's a FT13UO, Chris.
Okay.
And on the back, I'll do a scan of these sometimes, so it's a lot easier to screen share. It's actually got the specifications of the revs and the grams and the other things. 32,000 revs that said there. 32,000, and a couple of other old things, just some instructions and things from the early Marusan sets. Some quaint English Japanese translations.
I bet.
Like my personal favourite, it has a precision hit motor with interchangeable carbon blushes. and some of the instructions for the power pack there is a little bit humorous at times too. So, and the other thing, I got a blue and yellow car the other day. It was a number 94 Spike, a C8. So I've joined your group, Greg.
The scale, I think that was the first Scale Auto 1/32 car I bought, was the Spiker.
Yeah, so it's,
Those are cool looking cars too.
yeah. Okay, that'll do me for the moment.
All right. Thanks
Greg,
for
I
sharing
just found
this.
that picture.
Okay. Hold on. Oh, yeah. That is unsightly.
Oh, yes.
Cool. Yeah, so that thing will be perfect there. And your the camera needs to be raised up in order to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, definitely take some pictures of your progress on that so you can share that later.
Yeah, I will.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And does anybody else have any show and tell they want to? All right, Wayne.
I got a little one for, this is actually for Martin. He always sort of looks like he's taking the piss out of me, facial expression, when I show my detailed stuff. So I'm doing a Jordan 191 Grand Prix car for a guy in Germany, and he wanted detailed wheels.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
What that is, that 1/32 or 1/24?
No, this started out as a there's lots of kits in Germany. This started out as a fine design kit, but I don't have the driver in, and I don't have any other pictures of this. He's a wheel guy, and he wanted me to try and make somewhat looking realistic wheels on the thing. So I added little wheel weights and valve stems and stuff like that for him. So
look at the wing adjuster on the front.
Sorry?
Wow. The wing adjuster on the front, the aero adjuster.
Yeah, that stuff is all painted stuff, Martin. It's like molded, like it's not, I'm not taking any, I just took a brush with some metallic gray paint and hit the bolt on the end of it. So
looks fantastic.
We didn't do that much there, but it was sort of the wheel that I had to modify quite a bit. So
I'm just trying to get a gauge on the size of that. Is that a 1/24 scale car? Or?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Still, that's insane. I look forward to seeing the helmet.
Martin can continue to think I'm extremely anal as we go through these things. So
we want to maintain appearances.
Just one more thing.
Okay, Paul. Then we'll get to Wayne.
All right. That's what I was saying about the roofing.
I can't really make it out in the picture.
Looks like a roof.
Yeah, I remember you doing that one, Paul. That's good.
That's the sticks.
It's like shingle boards across the top of the roof.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the gantry with the they're going down vertical. See them?
Yep.
So that covers the whole of the timing system.
Covers your
where the
light
beams go through, that covers a lot.
Nice. All right, Wayne, your turn.
Revo slot Supra in the JPS livery. Magnificent.
That is nice. Is that a factory car, or did you do that?
Yeah, no, that's a factory car. And give it a quick little spin around the Carrera track we raced on the other night, and it's great.
Yeah, I'm slowly digging my track out from under all the crap I've been piling up on it, just so I can turn my new cars around the track a few times. And the Scale Auto, the new those new Revo slots are running smoother out of the box than my original Revo slot did.
Yeah,
so that's
the
nice
new ones are good. One of the guys has got a Marcos, and one of the other guys has got a Caltex Super as well. But yeah, just so good.
They are good. Yeah, those are basically the ones that I'm looking forward to turning around the track, is the two new Revo slots I got, the Marcos, and I got the Viper.
You really jolted me into action there, Greg. I'm the other Wayne, and for a moment there I thought, oh, I've got to get
I've got nothing.
That's what I thought, but I actually have. I've got a circle back. It's something we spoke about last week, and we didn't really get to a conclusion on it. So I did a little bit more research, and I've got a picture I can show you of the old Interlagos Circuit. Do you remember me showing you a HO circuit that was about 200 foot long, and it was Interlagos, but it didn't look like the one you knew.
Yep.
Well, this is the Interlagos circuit up until about the late 70s. So this is the hill and start finish line, and the first curve is now the Senna S. But in fact, back then it was just curve 1, curve 2. And this the new circuit overlays onto this circuit. If I can just get to the next picture somehow. How do I do that? Can't see the pointer.
You might just be able to hit your arrow keys and go left or right or something.
Yeah, let's try. There it is. So that's the circuit we all use. We all know now. So you can see what I meant, that it had nearly 2 laps per lap. That's what I said at the time. And I showed you how, I tried to point out where the Senna S now goes. That's the Senna S. And yeah, that's just to fill in what appeared to be a bit of a hole that I left in last week's slot history and the Senna and the Interlagos circuit.
Makes a lot more sense now.
Hopefully.
Well, when did they stop using that one, Wayne? Because I do vaguely remember it. I remember the very, very fast young cow, because they used to howl around that to get up the hill, didn't they?
Yeah, well, this area.
I vaguely remember that.
If I'm not mistaken, this area is now an industrial park.
Yeah, and I think Curve 3 is a flats, isn't it?
I'm not sure, but I know it's shrunk, and I know it's been built on, and it's this end of the track that's been lost.
Yeah, because the wall comes around there now, doesn't it?
Actually,
I do remember that young cow being a very, very fast corner where they slingshot them up the hill. Not like the one.
You see, I don't. I'll get the answer, and I'll get back to you. Is the answer to that, and I shall do that immediately.
All right, we'll circle back on that towards the end of the the end of the recording.
Now then, I can't stop sharing my screen.
All right, I'll take care of you.
Thank you.
All right, so does anybody else have any show and tell before I get into my idea? Seeing none. Oh, John, you had something? I can't hear you. Look at the chat.
Oh, sorry. I think Martin does, doesn't he?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Martin. Apparently, I'm missing your waves.
I picked up this little. It's only the second sideways I've ever had. I'm gonna take out this. I'm gonna put a slotted pod in it and run it with probably a King 21. But these things are going really fast. They really are shifting around the circuits apparently. So they're saying that on our local plexi tracks, they're almost as fast as the Mercedes GT3 NSRs. So
Martin,
why
don't you try an RT3 pod?
Sorry, which pod is that?
Scale Auto RT3.
RT3, okay, I'll make a note of that.
They're hands down the stiffest pods on the market right now.
Okay, I'll give it a bash. Thanks, Chris.
And is that car stock?
Yeah, currently that's dead stock.
George, let's see the bottom again, Martin. Yeah, you'd be fine.
Yeah, it hasn't turned the wheel yet. I haven't even stuck the wing on. And at the same time, I also collected about half a box of the Legends. I got the Prost car. I didn't want the Senna car, but this is just a beautiful little car. Somebody was saying, I think it was Dennis was saying a couple of weeks ago that somebody supplies really, really good quality helmets for these things.
Interlagos Miniatures.
Okay.
And as far as I know at this point, I may be wrong, but I think they're only available to Electric Dreams.
Right, okay, I'll give them a shout.
And they're stunning.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that. Good tip. Cheers.
And they're expensive.
Ah, well. They're worth it. They're worth paying for.
But I tell you, one of my biggest bugs with all the guys is the drivers. I think the drivers, they just do a shitty job on the drive. Excuse my language, but you can improve the car so much more. And they probably got about 10 different variations of Senna helmets, depending on, so you want to match up the right one.
Awesome.
Chris, does that pod, the Scale Auto pod, fit on the Thunderflat cars?
No, it does. No, it does not.
Oh, that's too bad.
I'm doing a few thunder slots now for a few folks, and no, I will have to check, but my initial is it does not fit, but it's that RT3 pod is spectacular. Martin, do you run on wood or plastic?
The local clubs are all plastic, but the GT3 series is exclusively wood.
Okay. To try something neat, you might want to try just bolting an FC130 can in that and dumping the FK180.
All right.
I've done that.
Well, is that what you were holding up there, Wayne?
That's the pod Chris is talking about right there. It's got the flat 6 in it at the moment, but it'll have an FC130 in it later on, and not sure what I'm going to put it in yet.
What's the purpose of why do you suggest that, Chris?
Well, for plastic tracks, I do not suggest that, only because all the FK180s have longer and stronger magnets, so you get no magnet car. It's a bit cheating. For a wood track, you've got this great big hunk of weight sitting at the back end of the car, which really it's all fulcrum and moment of inertia. It just pulls the back end around. So you get much more nimble handling if you just bolt an FC130s are probably 8 or 9 grams lighter than an FK180. So wood tracks, short FC130, plastic tracks, keep going with the FK180s.
Actually, Chris, I tried the FC130s in most of the pods from Slotted and from Thunderslot, and from some of the slotted ones, the angle winders. And I found the FC130 to be a much better motor for plastic tracks. The magnetism is minimal, but they've got so much torque that you can't drive the things around plastic track.
No, I mean, true enough. A lot of guys still like the big muscle, think the torquey things are neat and cool and stuff, which is fine. I don't like FK180s, period, unless the rule says you have to use them. It just makes zero sense to me. Some guys still like them, depending, again, if you're running in a lot of European series, if you're running in the Italian championships and stuff like that, they basically allow you they don't permit any ground clearance. So you can run the motor right down on the rails. And if you look at a lot of the cars that run in Italy and Czechoslovakia and Spain and stuff, after a heat, turn the car over and the wrappers have all worn off the bottom of the motor because they run them so low. So if your rules and if you do that, there's some motors you can get 40 or 50 grams of downforce running on a plastic track easily, and that's a serious number. I mean, that more than compensates for having that great big stupid hunking weight at the back of the car. You can't make up 50 grams of downforce any other way. So the ultimate quick thing, if you can lower the thing down as much as you want, is an FK180 with strong magnets for plastic track, but on wood tracks, put the lightest, smallest motor you can back there.
And I think Martin was showing off how much traction that car was getting. I assume there was no traction magnet in that car. It was just the motor magnet holding it to that Inco track, it looked like.
And how much clearance do you have on that, Martin?
It's bog standard, so I don't know. It's not a lot. It's quite tight.
At least a mil or two.
Yeah, it's about two and a half mil.
Oh God, you got tons.
Yeah.
You start running that down at around a mil clearance, and that magnetism will quadruple.
Yeah, incredible. So do you guys in Canada, do you run height restrictions?
Sorry?
Do you actually have height restrictions, minimum gap?
Yes, some clubs no.
So what do you do? Do you just put a blank on a piece of track and put the car on top, or?
Yeah, I mean, at our clubs, we just have a piece of plexiglass or something that's completely non-magnet effective. And when we were still open and I was race director, I just cut a bunch of 6-inch pieces of piano wire for guys. Of the proper diameter or whatever I needed, and then I would give everybody one. So you put it on your plexi, as long as I can slide whatever diameter I want of the piano wire under the chassis, you were good to go.
That's a quick way of doing it. I've seen some very convoluted ways of trying to measure that, and that's simple and effective.
It's in a lot of the European races, they measure the cars on a Lexan or a Playtax block, and you basically have to have 1 mil clearance. And they all run stupidly soft, flimsy chassis, so that as soon as you put it on the plastic track, the whole chassis bows and the motor gets sucked right onto the rails, and it changes the whole thing around. So I don't like that form of racing. I don't think that magnet, if you're going to run a magnet, run a magnet. Like if you're not going to run one, don't pretend you are running one. So anyway.
One of the clubs I go to that runs on Scale Electric Sport Track has a magnet Marshall, and from a stock Scale Electric motor, we get about 8 grams of magnetic downforce measured on that device.
Yeah,
not much, but it's there and it makes a difference.
Yeah.
If you can get in the zone where your motor's playing, then it makes a difference.
Yeah, I was going to say when we're running, well, most of our club tracks are plastic. So there's always some kind of a magnetic downforce limitation. And since we run without traction magnets, that's whatever the motor is pulling, and we use a magnet Marshall. And if the car is pulling more than it's allowed, then we say, okay, put fresh tires on or swap out that motor or something, because we're not going to have them pulling 20, 30 grams when the limit is 15.
Do you normally have car weight limits as well, Greg?
Yeah, those usually pretty generous. We usually allow the addition of some lead, some ballast of some sort, usually not more than 15 grams of ballast, and that usually gets put up front somewhere for the people who think that'll help.
Well, I mean, while magnet Marshalls are neat and you can measure the downforce, the trick has always been to get every little piece of weight you can out of the car. So
I know. Right?
If you're getting 8 grams of downforce and your whole car weighs 8 grams, it'll never come off.
Right.
If you've got 8 grams of downforce and your car weighs 150 grams, that poor little magnets just can't hang on. So
yeah, it's mainly to keep people honest. We don't really think that small of a downforce is going to make or break somebody in a race. But so that when somebody slaps a car on there, it's like, oh yeah, you forgot to take out the magnet because it says 150 grams of magnetic downforce.
No, I agree with you, but I mean, if you had 2 cars that had 8 grams of downforce, one weighed 100 grams and one weighed 60 grams, the car in total, the 60-gram car with 8 grams of downforce will just disappear.
Yeah, and we also have weight minimums, as far as overall weight.
That's okay, good.
Yeah.
So that's the important factor then, Chris. Is it magnet downforce versus all up weight? Because I tend to find that with the standard Scale Electric motor, it can't pull a car that weighs anything much more than about 85 grams.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's there's no, mythologies. I mean, you take a magnet off and stick it on your fridge all by itself, it'll stay there forever. You start loading it up with, Chinese food menus and all the rest of the stuff underneath it, and it starts pulling off. So the lighter you can physically make your car, if you're running on rails and if there is some sort of magnetic downforce, the car will just go, it'll stick on much better, accelerate better, brake better, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a relationship between the magnetic downforce and the weight of the car.
It's right, effective magnetism based on how much work the magnet's trying to do.
That's one of the ways that you can reduce the mitigating factors on racing with fuel simulation, because if the magnet is too strong, you're not going to go as quickly, and your the power difference makes a significant difference overall. So you're better off having less magnetism in that case as a result of that.
Well, but your system's 8 grams is 8 grams.
Yeah.
Right. Your race management doesn't know 8 grams, and it sure as hell doesn't know that Greg's car weighs 100 grams and my car weighs 60 grams. What it knows is lap times.
Sure.
And throttle control.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, even though I've run in a race where there were no weight limits, no one ran a car much above 100, and the cars that were up around 100 were slower than the cars that were down around 85. But the box stock car came out the box about 76, and at 76 grand, it just wouldn't work. It was just too tippy. So I still think there's a case for adding lead, even though you're running non-magnet motor magnet downforce. So we call it.
Again, yes, there is. It depends on the motor you're running, the tire. It depends on a lot of things. But from a purely magnetic point of view, less weight, same magnet downforce equals a quicker car. Now,
And I don't disagree at all. I totally agree with that. I just think that because you can't change the weight of the body shell, the height of the CFG is still important, even though you've got that little tiny bit of magnet downforce. Your lighter car will be faster off the mark. It'll be faster down the straight, off of all the corners, but it won't do the faster lap time because the car with the lower CG will still out corner it, and over the duration of an endurance race, it'll crash less because it just rolls over less.
Yeah, I don't think Chris is saying that's it. I think Chris is just saying that when you're talking about just magnetic downforce and everything else is variable, right? He's not saying those are the only things that matter. Obviously, center of gravity and total height and track width and all, everything comes into play, obviously. But when you're saying, well, this car has 8 grams and this car has 16 grams, or they both have 8, but they weigh obviously all of the things come into play. So you can't just say, well, the downforce alone is what determines whether or not this car is going to perform better than the other car.
Right.
Yes, you're comparing two similarly handling cars.
Well, if you, take two slotted Porsche 956s, right? Same center of gravity. If one has lighter wheels, lighter gears, and weighs 5 or 10 grams less, same basic center of gravity, plus or minus, the lighter car and bear in mind, the amount of downforce that your basic stock FC130 generates is not bloody much. It's not, 5 or 6 grams is not too much. Some of the high leak cans, I've got a couple of FC130s with polyneal magnets in them that generate 40 or 50 grams of downforce. Now that's serious. That makes a huge difference. And as far as weighting cars, as soon as you take the magnet out or run on a track that has braid or tape, weight is a great. Weight is always the final tuning element, but it's a great tuning element. And again, it depends on the tires. Urethanes tend to favor a slightly lighter car, where rubber tires tend to favor a slightly heavier car. And when I say heavier, I'm not saying 200 grams. It can be a difference of 4 or 5 grams, but the composition of rubber tends to favor a little bit softer tire, or a few grams more.
That'll be to do with getting the tires switched on and getting some temperature going in them and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, temperature definitely has an effect. Swinging back to what Mike was saying with regards to digital racing and fuel usage, it's something that doesn't have a direct analog in analog racing. In that, as Chris was saying, the system knows how fast your laps are, but it doesn't know how much magnetic downforce your car has or how heavy your car is or something like that. With digital racing, it still doesn't know those things, but it does know, with most systems, how much throttle you're using the whole time. So it knows lap times, and therefore how fast your car is going, but it knows how much throttle you're using to get your car to go that fast. So if I have a heavy car or with more magnetic downforce or both or whatever, I'm using higher throttle in order to get those lap times than the guy who's got a lighter car with less magnetic downforce. If he's able to keep his car on the track, we're both able to make the same lap times, my heavier car is going to need me to go in higher throttle more of the time than his lighter car is. And I'll burn more fuel, requiring me to pit more often or take on more fuel, or a splash and dash can't be quite so dash, etc. And so those things have even more of an effect for digital racers who use those simulations, because we having a lighter car is even more important, because the less fuel you use, the less you're pitting, and all those things come into play. So that's one of the reasons I don't like magnet
Do those
racing.
digital systems know how much throttle you're using, or do they just know that you're on the throttle?
They know how much you're using. So it knows the difference. It knows that I'm using 75% throttle and Mike's using 55% throttle. And so he's burning less fuel. Hey.
Hiya. You all right?
Yeah, we're doing okay. Thanks for joining in, Stephen.
I'm just listening in. I am, yeah. So I'm doing some listening, but my brother just touched on a question there, and I thought exactly the same. But I'm going to expand that a little bit, because I don't know the answer. Does it know that from throttle position, or does it know that from current used?
So when we're talking about a digital system, one of the main differences between digital and analog is the power generally doesn't actually flow through the controller. The controller is telling your digital system how much you're pulling the trigger. So it's based on a resistance value. In most digital throttle use some sort of resistor, and the base is reading that resistance, and it knows if you're at 1% or 20% or 55% or 76% or 100%. So it knows based on its technology, each system is slightly different, but it knows based on its technology exactly where your trigger is from millisecond to millisecond. So it's reading the position of your trigger in real time constantly. So it knows when you're speeding.
So if you can build a car that goes further on less throttle input, you'll get a better fuel economy.
Correct.
Exactly my point.
Yep. What's your question, Russ?
So is it based on where your trigger is, or the lap time?
It's based primarily, well, it depends on the system. The current Scalextric Arc Pro and the current Scalextric Arc system, although the technology is available for it to know how much throttle you're using, it's based primarily on lap time. Very similar to your fuel on your track is based pretty much entirely on lap time. So in your case, I conserve fuel by running a slightly slower lap, and I burn more fuel by running a faster lap. For digital, when we're using these technologies, I can get the exact same lap time, but if I'm having to use more throttle to get my heavier car around the track, I'm burning more fuel as a result of that. And it knows, because the reason it knows is because that's how the system functions, right? I'm telling the power base how fast I want my car to go, and then it's telling the car how fast to go. So
yes, you fly by wire on digital, aren't you? As opposed to like a mechanical linkage.
Yeah, no, great analogy.
More or less. I mean, it's not strictly true, but
yes, your throttle input is a request for 75% power, which the base will supply to the car. But it's
you're not actually putting resistance. Yeah, you're sending a signal, so you're flying by wire.
Exactly, that's it. And modern cars, real full
cars
do that.
It's reading that telemetry constantly and working out your fuel usage from that telemetry.
Also, some pretty neat. If you analyze that, it can really help out your driving style as well. So I'm coming around a corner and asking for 50% throttle. The car doesn't spin up the rear tires, but it moves down the track. I come around the same corner and ask for 75% throttle. My tires spin. I don't go any further, but I'm using more gas. So it can really help you, go forwards as opposed to going sideways, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, not a lot of systems provide that level of analysis. I mean, some of the systems will allow you to kind of see a graph sort of what you did. Like if you're recording a pace car, one of the systems will let you record a pace car off of your own throttle use, and then you can see the graph, going up and down and stuff like that to make adjustments.
Yeah, true. But I mean, you could probably say take a 10-lap average and a 10-lap fuel average and a 10-lap average lap time, and with different driving styles, end up with the same or better lap time with less. Yeah, I wasn't presumptuous enough to say that a voice is going to come on and say, slow down, you're going fast. But you certainly could, if you wanted to put a little effort in, analyze driving styles.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And with more. Yeah.
What you're alluding to there, Chris, is that you can achieve a similar lap time by keeping the car in a straight line than you can by hanging the tail out throughout a corner.
I mean, that's true no matter what.
Well, my experience is with the low downforce non-magnet rubber tire racing that we've done on Scalextric Sport Digital is that you will always achieve the fastest lap if you can get the tail out by about 20 degrees and keep it there. No more.
That's always been the case. If you look at advanced Formula One or sports car graphs, there are ideal slip angles based on the adhesion of the tarmac and the compound of the tire and the pressure. So I'm not saying do not slide the car. There always is, based on the adhesion of the tire and the adhesion of the track, there is a perfect slip angle to achieve.
You keep your revs up as well.
Sorry?
So you keep the motor revs up as real
that's always been, it's always been that way in real car, one-to-one car racing. It's always been that way in spot car racing. But what I'm suggesting is I see guys coming out of corners and the
full tank slapper mode,
45 degrees one way, 45 degrees the other way, 30, 15. And if I use half the throttle, I'm already a third the way down the throttle and they're still vibrating sideways.
Absolutely.
I'll say it this way. From a driver's perspective, what you want to see in your car is not that it's sliding. If while you're driving your car around, you're like, oh, look at that drift. No, bad, too much. If you're driving your car and you're like, oh, that it took that corner really well, but didn't slide out very much. That's where you want to be, because it is sliding, just that, less than 20 degrees that you're talking about. But you're not, when you're watching the car go around the turn, it doesn't look like it's sliding because it's a very small amount and it's going around the perfect speed. If it looks like it's sliding, then you get what Chris said. It's tail wagging its way up the straight and losing all kinds of speed.
That's exactly right. And you're also, Martin, you were talking about, well, I was going to say to something that you just mentioned, that when you were on the power around the corner and you've just got the tail out, you're actually keeping the dynamic weight distribution optimized for rear-wheel drive. You're keeping the weight off the nose, on the tail. You're still pushing the car. You're pushing the guide. You're keeping the weight near the back. And, of course, then you're perfectly set up for the power application going onto the straight.
Yeah, and that's only going to happen if you're coming out with that very slight angle that you don't really notice. Yeah. Because if you're beyond that and you hit the power, it's going to wag. But if you're at that or you're inside that limit and you hit the power, it's going to straighten up nice and quick.
Yeah. Perfect proof of this whole thing is in a lot of we used to, when we started racing a few classes at a couple of the commercial tracks, all the guys wanted like mega horsepower. We got to have give me the 60,000 RPM, 50,000 RPM. I'm going to show you guys how quick I am here. As soon as the guys backed off a little bit and went to 18, 12, whatever, lesser horsepower to suit the track, number one, most of the guys improved their lap times. Number two, they improved their race laps by a ton, overall total laps, because they didn't come off as much. Similarly, if you turn the volts down a half a volt or whatever and play around, you find, geez, the cars, I can now make the car go forward as opposed to completely sideways, and the lap times really don't change that much. In a lot of cases, they go better. Going forward is better than 45 degrees. It's quicker than going 45 degrees sideways.
All right, I think this we've gotten quite a bit off of our topic of show and tell. There's
Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. Rather than continue discussion on digital and slip angles and stuff like that, which we can certainly spend lots of time on, and we probably will every show at least a little bit. Is there any other show and tell that anybody wants to share before I go ahead, Paul?
I've been playing with the fly chevron.
Is that even a fly anymore?
Well, body-ish.
Yeah.
It's even got a driver in it. But that's going to be my racer beater upper, so I don't really care. As long as it goes, and like you say, handles, it's going to handle better than the original body. Or the original.
That looks like, hold that chassis up again. Up a little, there you go. Yeah, that should handle nicely.
That's the new Angelo Amato chassis.
Angelo lives near to me.
3D printed?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that looks nice. Yeah, let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, so I did want to, I'll do my quick little demonstration on braid setup I had mentioned earlier, and I promised a viewer that I was going to talk about this, and then we'll get into my share your favorite internet slot related thing topic that I was talking about earlier. But basically, I had mentioned this before on how to set up braid for Scalextric Sport Track, and so I kind of wanted to go into a little bit more detail. So what you should be seeing is the underside of a car with its braid on a Scalextric Sport Track. And I'm starting with this picture because it kind of shows why this braid setup method is good for Scalextric Sport Track. You can see the slot is created by the rails themselves. And even Scalextric's own guide is wider than the rails are on their track by quite a bit. And this is the braid after I've brought it inwards towards the guide in order to set them up properly for their track. Now, I want to make it clear, again, this only applies to Scalextric Sport, Classic, and the original SCX analog track where the slot is created by the rails, and you can see the metal is in the slot. Do not use this braid setup on any other track that has a slot liner or braid or pretty much anything other than Scalextric Sport, Classic, and SCX original analog track. However, if you are one of the millions of people out there who use this kind of track, trust me and try this braid setup. So I'm just gonna kind of scroll through here and find a good picture. So this shows the twist. So this is after I've folded the bottom half of the braid down. This trick applies regardless if you're a Carrera car, a Scalextric car with 2 fingers of braids on each side, or any other car with just 2 braids, which is more common. I fold down the bottom ones so they don't point forward anymore, because otherwise they get tangled up. Sometimes I do the twist on all 4. Sometimes I only do the twist on the main ones. These ones that lay over you definitely got to do the twist. And what I'm trying to show in this picture is not only are you twisting the braid a little bit so that it kind of wants to go slightly parallel to the guide, but also you're bringing it in as closely as possible. Now this is exaggerated. This is not how it's going to be on the track. Otherwise it'll short across and cause all kinds of problems. So you want to make sure that your braid is not going beyond the end of the guide, especially if you're twisting it like this. But as soon as you put it on the track, they'll flatten down. And usually after I do the twist, I run my thumbs on and try to flatten it down a little bit more. So it still has the twist, but it's flatter, right? This shows how I unfold the braids. So you can see this is how they come from Scalextric. So I fold up the top ones and then fold down the bottom ones and then fold the top ones back down so that they're all pointing the same direction. And then I give them a twist. Here's kind of looking dead on. You can kind of see this is the tip of the braid here, the ends of the braid. So you see how much of an angle there is and how much they've been pulled in toward the guide and how severe it is. Because if they're just as stock, then maybe half the braid is touching the rail because the rest of the rail is touching the guide, and it's not very wide rail. Let's see if there's any pictures that show anything better. Nope, that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions on this that I should address? Something I might have missed this time or last time?
Do you ever cut the back pair of braids off?
Sometimes I'll rearrange the braids, or the only reason I don't cut the back pair off or shorten them is because most of these cars are so high off, the guide is so high off the track anyways that it doesn't make that much difference, or the front wheels keep the guide so high off the track that it doesn't help by removing those. So I don't go through the trouble of removing those.
Looking at that picture, Greg, it looks like... I
invariably cut them. If you go back to your last picture, Greg, just, where your point, just the little slot that the back braid comes out of, right there,
yeah,
I'll drizzle in a tiny bit of crazy glue in there, just to hold that end down, and then just take that back tab off.
Yeah.
If you're running sort of stockish type ride heights, it really doesn't make much difference. If you can true and reduce the diameter of the front tires, it makes a good difference.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of things that can be done to improve Scalextric cars, but just anybody can take a car out of the box, fix their braids to look like this, and notice notice a marked improvement on performance, both acceleration and braking, simply because the braids are getting better connection, without having to trim things or glue things or replace things. Or
well, even folding those back tabs the way you have them, so they all go. I mean, that picks up another 25 thou in slot depth generally.
Yeah, and it helps for sure, but the main reason is to keep them from getting so tangled up. I mean, the braids get mangled, just ruined.
Well,
and people don't even know why their car isn't working well, because they don't recognize that a mangled up braid is bad. But just folding it backwards like that keeps it from getting so mangled up. Did I hear somebody else?
I almost yell and scream when I see cars in proxy races. Guys are, I spent 23 hours setting up my gear mesh and 42 hours doing this. I turn the car over and the braids look like something that
the cat dragged in.
I just about scream when I see it.
Yeah, braid setup makes a big difference pretty much in all things. And that's why I wanted to kind of go over this for all those Scalextric users out there. This will change a lot of your performance, your car performances.
Yeah,
Before I stop this share, does anybody else have any questions?
What actually holds, I haven't seen anything like this before. What actually holds, when you pull that one back, the bottom one, the back one, what stops the whole braid from coming right out? Apart from, I know it's going to be folded over, but
it's under. It's under, and then this plate is pressurized against the,
it snaps
the other plate.
Together.
Yeah, so let me see here. So that's the braid plate, and it's just a quick change system that they designed. The braid goes under there, right? And this whole disc is then held with pressure against the plate that actually contacts the braids. I don't think I have a picture of the car without the braid plate on there. But you can kind of see here, this is the actual guide up here with a round disc, and then there's metal feet that are on that, and then the back of the braid touches those metal feet to continue the continuity between the braid and the motor. So this plate comes off just to make it easier to change braids without having to open up the car and take off ferrules and solder and stuff like that. The plate slides forward and then just comes off from around the guide. And then Martin, you got one? Let me.
Oh, there you go.
Let me show that here. Stop my share and spotlight. Oh, try that again. Okay, there you go. Thank you very much, Martin. Yeah, so yeah, you can see on the car, those metal tabs are where the back of the braid touches. And then on the other side of the braid plate is just, a little strip of the braid that touches that metal. Yeah, and you can see, there you go. Hold it up a little bit more.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you can see what you're basically sliding the guide plate, the braid plate over the back of the guide, which has a slot in it. And then you push it down and then you snap it forward. And so the car moving forward helps keep the braid plate in the car. And the braids are always being kind of brushed backwards. So there's pretty much nothing pulling the guide or the braid off of the car.
That's
it doesn't
a pretty
slip.
apt car for you, Martin.
What's that, mate?
So that's a pretty apt car for you, isn't it?
Happen to have one sitting around, did you?
No, he's been in the back of a few.
That's my wife's works car, isn't it?
All right, so that's my in-depth how to set up braid for Scalextric Sport Classic and SCX original analog track. And like I said, that applies to all cars, slotted NSR, Scale Auto, all of them on that kind of track, but don't do that on any other kind of track. It's just not going to help you.
The car you showed us then, Greg, for the guys who went to Gaydon in 2018, that was outside the gentleman's toilets. That car was actually in the hall, the 1-to-1 6R4. That's the Clarion, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually saw one of the real ones, just outside the gentleman's toilets.
That's probably where it belongs. I don't know.
Oh no, you see those things coming through the trees at you, man alive, they're frightening.
The two better things were actually in the garage, weren't they?
All right.
Just been watching on YouTube. There's a bunch of new YouTube videos on 10 and 20-minute little excerpts of the older Group B cars. And I've been watching those. It's absolutely, it's unbelievable to see those things go.
Looks like Wayne has a topic for us to discuss at a later date. But Arcade, did you have a?
Yeah, on some guide blades I've seen, like the Thunderslot stock guide blades, and some of the Scale Auto, where the blade, pardon me, actually angles forward so you get a tip down low. On Scalextric track, I've had issues where that tip will actually hit and bite into the extensions that go down and actually hold the rail in place. So we've actually had to round them off and in some cases actually clip them flush because it's like hitting a brick wall. Bam, that tip locks into that piece of rail that goes down and it just locks and jams the car. So
Designed for wood tracks.
Pardon me?
Designed for wood tracks.
I know. But a lot of time people run them on plastic, and on the Scalextric track, it's, as I said, it's like hitting a brick wall, and it's like, what happened there? Well, that's what it is. It's that extension that actually holds the rail in place on Scalextric track.
Yeah, and it's not that so much as that guide is not designed for that track, and so the guide's deeper than it should be. I mean, there's regardless of what brand of track or car you're running, except for those people with wood tracks and ginormous slots where guides don't matter. But if you have plastic track and you're putting a car on there, it's a good idea to kind of make sure it goes without catching before you try to drive it hard.
It's certainly found that it's not an issue on Carrera track because you've actually got a plastic slot that you're running in. And you don't have those little tabs sticking down. It's those tabs sticking down that causes the problem.
Well, here's another word of warning for similar situation. If you have a digital track, sometimes the guides will be deep enough not to catch on the slot, but deep enough to catch on the electronics of certain digital pieces, ripping off important electronic bits. I did that with a slotted guide early on, and at that point I made sure that all guides had a little ramp up front so that they would just kind of skip over things that were a little bit too high in the slot. But yeah, great point. You know, make sure that your guide is compatible with whatever track you're running it on. Or like Chris says, just get a nice big routed or a small one, whatever size, do a routed track, and then you control the depth of your slot.
For anybody, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, any of your Sanico cars that won't go around your track, send them over. I'll put them on my track.
We'll figure it out. Hey, I get half of those, by the way.
I'm sure most of you, anybody running on plastic tracks, I'm sure all you guys know this, but it's a very good idea to take the front edge of your guide and either with a file or some sandpaper, bevel the front edges of the front of the guide at 20, 30, 45 degree angles so that the leading edge of the guide will not jam on some sort of irregularity. It sort of slides over it a little bit more.
I also typically round off that leading bottom of the blade too, so that if it does hit something, it doesn't jam into it. Instead, it just kind of bumps or bounces.
Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
You can angle. The only part I'm not going to fine. I'm going to go nuts on guides. That just have fun.
All right, we'll save guide talk for another day. But I did have a suggestion I made early on. I wanted to give some time to, and that was what your favorite thing is on the internet that is slot car related. And I used my example earlier, and I'll go ahead and use it for my thing. Is Dave Kennedy's Slot Car News official YouTube channel. He's been posting a lot of really great, informative, insightful videos along with his regular news, upcoming car releases and things like that. But he's got lots of tips and tricks and, in industry insider videos and stuff like that. If you're not already a subscriber to his videos, go ahead and hit the link. I put it in the chat for people who are here. I will copy all links that are put into the chat into the video description. So when I post a video on YouTube, then people will be able to just click the link. So right now there's the Slot Car News official channel link there. And yeah, it's a great channel. So if you use YouTube, you should be, subscribed and watching his videos. Obviously it'll help him during hard times as well. I don't believe he's currently working for anybody. So there's that. You can always buy him a drink or a coffee. I think he has a coffee donation link or something like that. But just great videos. So check them out. And so that's your example. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Website, retailer, forum, YouTube video, anything at all? I could name a dozen, but I don't want to take off the stage. Russ, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I've got one of. Oh, sorry.
You're muted again, Russ.
Okay. All right. So it's there is a lot of stuff on YouTube. If you type in just slot car in the search, it's amazing how much comes up. And you can just thumb through the stuff and pick things you want to pick. Boone's Slot Car Garage is on Facebook. That's where I catch him at. I think he's also on YouTube. But he's got some really neat, down-to-earth little tricks and things on landscaping, stuff like that. So he's really good. And there is a lot. I mean, I'm not kidding you when I tell you that. There's videos of racing, videos of how people are doing things. But yeah, check it out. The YouTube's really good.
I've seen several of his channels. I'm pretty sure I'm subscribed, but I'll make sure that I am after this. And I'll dig up his link and post that in the description for people later. If anybody has the link handy, they're welcome to post it in the chat there for me later. Did I see somebody else wanted to say? Kev, go ahead.
Yeah, I've seen on YouTube a lot of rally driving and using what looks like snow and things like that. But what is it? Does anybody know?
Oh, so you're asking a question how to landscape snow effects on a slot car track?
No, you can see that it looks like there's snow on the track, and there's a spray of snow. And what is that they're using?
It was flour.
Usually flour.
How do they keep the continuity of the?
It just works. That's the amazing thing, is they put flour all over the track and it still works.
Part of it is braid preparation, where you actually have to take the tips and kind of bend them down so they act a little bit like a plow, so that you get good connection. But yeah, I mean, it's just basically flour and a good vacuum cleaner afterwards.
Yeah, and clean it up. Big Dan, what did you want to share?
Yeah, I find that Home Racing World is a good site to go to for how-tos and reviews of cars and things. I sort of probably access that more than anything else.
Yeah, is that a YouTube channel or a website or?
Website. I think they've got their own YouTube channel as well. But I just go to Home Racing World and HRW, and I think it's the guy's Harry Wise is the fellow that runs it. But it's worth a look anyway.
You said Home Racing, not iRacing?
No, Home Racing World.
Home
HRW.
Racing World. Gotcha. Oh yeah, very familiar with Home Racing World. So yeah, I'll put a link. Home Racing World. Yeah, great site, great forum. Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have anything that they want to share? Website, retailer, YouTube, forum? Okay. Well, I have other topics we can get to for future reference. You know, we'll give an opportunity for people to, share their favorite, web resource.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. I had a question for Chris. I sent him a PM, but I was wondering if he might post a link to those Group 5 videos he was talking about earlier. And just in terms of fun slot car viewing, one of my favorite sites is on YouTube. Is a site by a guy called Moersin, Moersin. He does strictly Carrera, and he just has some of what I think are the best videos of cars in motion. He reviews Carrera cars, not so much reviews as just driving Carrera cars, racing them, kind of autonomously with in-car video, on-track video. It's just kind of cool stuff.
Did I spell it right? M-O-E-I-S-I-N?
M-O-E-R-S-I-N. Moersin.
Okay.
He has a whole channel on Carrera.
I'll see if I can find that and put a link in the description later. If anybody finds it, please put a link there in the chat for me. Jeremy, did you have something you wanted to share? Or are you just holding your hand up next to your face? Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything?
Just while you're doing that, just to answer Ray's question, Ray, if you just Google in Group B as in Bob, rally, you'll get all kinds of little 10-minute blurbs and 20-minute videos on the Group B stuff.
I can plug a very good channel for old rally footage. It's called VHS Rallies. I'm subscribed to it on YouTube. He's got the content or some of the content that no doubt Chris has been watching. VHS Rallies. He's been digitalizing his old VHS collection and publishing that for 18 months or more. And they're fantastic little 20-minute videos if you're into rally.
Okay, thanks, Chris and Wayne.
VHS Rallies. Awesome. I'll see if I can.
If you've never seen the Group B rally cars, you'll just be like, it's ridiculous.
I'm sure I've seen a few in the past, but I'll definitely be looking up some here in the near future. I did have a couple other topics in my stash, but did anybody have anything that they wanted to ask or bring up or circle back on? Go ahead, Mike. You're muted. Mike, you're muted. There we go. Okay, go ahead.
There. Since I started doing digital, I've had a couple controllers that have gone bad, and now I need to replace them. Who knows of a decent replacement controller for the Ski-Electric 7042 power base that's reliable? I know you've done something on controllers that I've seen on YouTube.
You
could
want
be
wired
either
or wireless?
Wireless or wired, doesn't make any difference. I need to get at least 2 more controllers. I've got a slotted SCP-1 and 2, and I really had terrible luck with them. They have been notoriously unreliable. The cars just will, in the middle of the race, just take off. And a lot of times if I plug them in, the cars will just take off on their own again. So I'm looking for something, comparable to the reliability of the originals. But yeah, like I said, either wireless or wired, doesn't make any difference. Wireless is obviously preferable. And generally I'm using an RCS 64 base. So for my race management.
So I can't disagree on the slotted controller thing. I love my slotted controllers for analog and for oxygen, but the digital controller, the way that it works is just not my cup of tea, and it's not as rock solid as it is for other uses. As far as True Speed is probably going to be your go-to. He's been he's been out of production for a while. He's been moving. So you might have to email him and say, what's the status on, certain controllers, but he offers both a wired SSD controller. It's under the digital controllers, Wayne, if you want to hit that. But he offers the SSD 4 as well as a wireless one for SSD. Let's see, Ninco controllers. So yeah, not that one. SSD 3 is the wired one, and then SSD 4, I believe, is wireless, but can also serve as a wired controller. He doesn't offer the wireless system. He offers a wireless controller that talks to a separate system for wireless receiving that then plugs into your power base.
Yeah, I believe that was manufactured by Slot Car Supplies.
SCS Wireless, yep. So SCS Wireless used to provide transmitter boxes that you plug your wired controller into, and then a receiver box that plugs into your power base. And then True Speed, Steve worked with them to integrate the transmitter into a True Speed controller. And that's what my digital club, Draw, has raced with for several years, is with True Speed controllers, wired, and then we did a group buy and bought a bunch of wireless controllers and SCX receivers. So basically everybody in the club has their own SCS wireless from True Speed, the SSD4 wireless controller, and then everybody with a track has the SCS wireless 6-channel receiver that then plugs into the power base. I would say that's the best product. However, can you get it? I don't know. You'll probably have to email Steve and say, what's the timeline on getting more of these? And then you have to figure out if you can get the receiver, because Steve at True Speed doesn't sell the receiver, and SCS Wireless has been kind of inactive. I haven't seen pretty much anything from them for a while, so I don't know if that's even available. So
well, Steve from True Speed is a competitor at North Wales Slot Car Club, which I was speaking about last week, and I've attended.
So Steve
at the same time.
So yeah, is he back in production?
It's difficult to know, because the last time I spoke to him in person would have been about a year ago.
Okay.
I think he's produced some stuff in the summer of 20, for the very least. I think he has. But I know that when I spoke to him about these controllers, because I did actually use these in a race there once, he actually intimated that he would like to come up with a system that would dispense with the SCS relay base station. He'd like to produce his own, but that was just a desire expressed, not a promise of a future product or anything like that.
I mean, maybe he'll work with SCS, if they're kind of getting out of the game, maybe they'll let him do the receivers or something like that. There's not a whole lot of other options. for the 7042 other than SCS, I'm sorry, the TrueSpeed controllers, the original Scalextric wired controllers. I think
the original Scalextric wireless controller is reputed to be very, very good, very durable, and quite handy in the ergonomics.
So you're talking about the ARC wireless
yes,
controllers?
the ARC controllers, yeah.
Okay.
But I want to
get in the other Mike is talking. Yeah, you need the ARC power base. Mike isn't using the ARC power base. And the downside with the ARC power base is that it's only wireless. You only have the option of the Scalextric wireless controllers or the slotted wireless oxygen controller, as long as it's got the right firmware in it. Those are your only options. There are no other options. With the original power base, the C7042, the APB power base that we're talking about, doesn't have a wireless built in, so you can't use those controllers.
Yeah.
There were, you might be able to find some on eBay or something, but a long time ago there was I think TrueSpeed was the one who offered it, but it was a conversion kit for like Parma controllers to convert them to Scalextric digital. I don't think that's worth even trying to find. I'm not sure if Digital Racing Solutions offers their Ramjet for Scalextric digital. I know they designed it for Carrera and for SCX that only need one button, but Scalextric needs two. And when I talked to him last, he didn't have a place to put the second button. And I'm like, well, yeah, here, right? So I don't know if they've actually done that yet. So, until somebody comes out with something else, TrueSpeed is pretty much your best bet. And otherwise, I assume you've already opened up the controllers and cleaned off the sliders and things like that, checked for broken wires and whatnot. So yeah, unless you can get some TrueSpeeds, then probably just pick up some more wired controllers off the bay or wherever. Maybe you can find some old stock somewhere, and just get some extras for.
So have you been able to identify what went wrong with your SCPs?
No, I have not yet.
It's not that there is anything necessarily wrong. It's just that the way that they work is not the way that the base wants it to work, right? So as we kind of talked about before, the way that the digital system works is it reads a resistance level in the controller. It's not putting a lot of power, it's putting a very small amount of power, 3 volts or 5.5 volts. And that is kind of where the problem starts, is that the base is sending a specific voltage out through the sliding resistor of the controller, low voltage, low power, just to read the resistance level. And then it gets back another voltage and says, okay, well, if this is the voltage I sent and this is the voltage I got back, this is how much resistance there is. And so then it knows where your throttle is. Well, the slotted controller is an electronic controller. It's not a resistive controller, right? So it's got to mimic what the base is expecting to see of a resistance controller. So it's outputting voltage to the power base.
Yeah.
And it's outputting, a variable voltage, obviously based on where your throttle is. The problem is that sometimes when electronics are weird and wonky, sometimes those things don't work the way that they're supposed to work. And so you might be driving along and then the car will just go off half-cocked, or you might be driving along and the car will just stop. And it's like, okay, well, unplug, replug, jiggle, whatever. And then sometimes you end up with a base with a dead controller port because it was not expecting voltage to be coming in and it got voltage and it damaged something. So a lot of people, with as soon as somebody has a damaged base that they used a slotted controller on, that spreads like wildfire. Everybody's like, I don't want to use a slotted controller on my base because I don't want my base to become damaged. And then if that is substantiated by anybody else, then it becomes truth. And now nobody wants to use a slotted controller on their Scalextric base because it might damage the base. Nobody wants to use an SCS wireless receiver because it works the same way. It's sending a voltage to the input to mimic resistance. People decided that an SCS wireless receiver could do the same kind of damage and don't want to use that. We've had guys in my club with one of my power bases lost a controller input. I can't pin it specifically to something, but I was using its TrueSpeed controller when it happened. you know, and one of the other guys had one of their, you know, controller ports die on their power base. They're fragile, you know, they're not designed for, you know, heavy, you know, they're toys, right? They're not designed to be robust. So it could have died for any number of reasons. But just the possibility that using a slotted controller or an SES wireless receiver might damage your base pretty much just kills that for a lot of people. Even if it works, even if there's no reason, you know, real reason to believe that that damage was caused by the controller, people still believe that. And so I don't say, you know, go buy that, it's the best thing. So these days I just say True Speed is good if you can get some.
What about Scorpius as a wireless?
Scorpius works differently. So you'd be able to use that for your APB, and I managed to get mine to function fairly well. I have two Scorpius controllers. I don't use them. I still prefer the True Speed. But the way that it works is you would need the Scorpius controller for everybody who needs a controller, obviously, and you would need a Scorpius dongle that then basically, because in that situation, you're telling, the Scorpius is telling the computer how fast to make your car go, and the computer is then telling the power base how fast to tell your car to go. So it only works with a computer. It has to have the PC, and it has to have a compatible race management system, and of course your power base also has to be the correct kind of power base with the updated firmware. So, you know, a handful of requirements. Which it is, yeah. So you're already set up, ready to go. You're using RCS64. You have the APB with the latest firmware. So all you would need to get is Scorpius controllers and one dongle for your computer or any other computer that you'd be using Scorpius controllers at. And then you set it up through the software, and they work fairly well. I can't say anything against them.
Is there lag, Greg?
What's that?
It goes through all those, if it goes through a computer, and then computer onto whatever, and then onto the tell you that, isn't there lag?
There at first there was pretty bad lag, and I worked, you know, I helped kind of troubleshoot some of the things, and you know, I would complain when there was lag, but they managed to get it down to a level that you can adjust to. It's perceptible. Some people can't perceive it, so it's very, very slight, but it's something that you can get used to. It's like milliseconds we're talking about. So perceptible, but adjustable, or you can adjust to it and race just fine.
I just wondered. That's all. When you say mine, I just plug it in.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's what you expect. So when you pull the trigger and the car pauses before it revs up, then you've got lag. If you pull the trigger and you don't really notice a pause, then you don't. And yeah, it was bad at first. And you know, of course, you got to have, you know, you make sure your PC has a decent processor. You know, you make sure it's not being taken up by other processes in the background. So you got to, you know, shut down background programs and stuff like that, and monitor the processing level. But if you have a fairly recent computer, not some old, you know, Windows 95, Windows 98 machine, and you're probably okay. If it's a Windows 7 or newer machine, it should be fully capable of using that with no substantial lag.
I have to have the dead man brake on mine. You know, like you got a panic button. If anyone comes out, it stops the race.
Sure.
Well, since my granddaughter ruined my slotted Nissan, I leave it switched on. So if she goes and picks up a controller, nothing happens.
Yeah.
Saves me cars.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Mike?
Have you tried converting the slotted controller to ARC 1 yet?
I did a while back when that was a new thing. I had an oxygen controller. I have not tried that with my SCP-3 that I just got, but I had done that successfully with the SCP-2 with the oxygen cartridge when they first released the ARC compatible firmware. So
how do you download the firmware to it?
On your phone?
No, on the phone. Yeah. I see, and then it uses Bluetooth.
Yeah. So
I'd have to do it on my. I don't have a smartphone, so I have to do it on my iPad.
So do you have an oxygen cartridge?
Yes.
Okay, so you should probably be able to, yeah, because I think Yeah, this was the very first one was before the Bluetooth thing was a thing. And so I loaded the firmware using the bootloader on my PC, but for that you need the oxygen dongle. So if you have an oxygen cartridge and an oxygen dongle, then you can load the Arc Pro firmware onto the cartridge and then pair that and use it with an Arc Pro or Arc Air or Arc Pro. They use the same technology. But yeah, I haven't tried it with the latest controller or the latest firmware. That's definitely something I need to try, but it should work. And the nice thing is if it doesn't, then you tell Slotted, hey, it's not working. And then they tell you how to fix it, or they fix whatever bug that you just found.
That's true. He's very responsive.
Very responsive.
Hey, Greg.
Yes, sir.
For you, since you use the True Speed 4s for racing extensively, do you have a problem with them shutting off? You have to always check them before the start of a race.
Yeah, they go to sleep. So before and even during track calls, because sometimes we get a bit chatty during track calls, we'll say, you know, pull your trigger real quick before we. And in fact, the nice thing about RCS 64 is that when we use automatic track calls and each driver basically has to tell the software when they're ready. And so we're looking at a screen with a bunch of red lights, and we all have to push the button on our controller to get it to turn to a green light. So just by virtue of having to go through that process, our controllers are woken back up. But otherwise, you know, before a race,
used RCS 64, an automatic track call sounds like an interesting thing to me. Can you explain to me
love it.
how that works?
Automatic track call is something that pretty much is difficult to do with any other system than a digital system, but I think there are systems out there. But basically how it works for Scalextric Digital and RCS 64, and this is how it worked with one of the earlier programs, SSDC. When you crash, naturally you let go of your throttle because your car isn't there to drive, so you let go of your trigger, and then you tell the system how long the counter should be from that point. And so let's say I set a 2-second automatic track call. That means as soon as I let go of my trigger, it starts a 2-second timer. And if that timer reaches 0 and I don't pull my trigger again, then it says, okay, well, he must have crashed. So it does the track call, and automatically everybody either stops or slows down depending on how you set the software to activate a track call. We usually go with full stop. So then everybody's car stops. Everybody looks around to see what idiot crashed. They put their car back on, and then we all tell the system that we're ready to go. In order for that to work, the race management program needs to be aware of what your throttle position is, and then start a timer. And
it has to be set longer than any braking event might be.
Exactly. So you definitely don't want a 0.1 second timer, because otherwise it'll be track calling at every turn. So we usually set it to a certain number of seconds just to make sure that not only are you penalized for crashing, but you're penalized for crashing. So so my car is sitting off in the corner. I'm going for 2 or 3 or 4 seconds while everybody else is continuing on. The downside is that if you're being especially optimistic that somebody might knock your car back in the slot, or you're driving the wrong car, you might not actually trigger the track call because you're holding the trigger or pulsing the trigger to hopefully get your car going again. One of our digital club members was notorious for doing that because he holds out hope that his car is going to get put back in by somebody coming around the next turn and kicking him back the other way or something like that. And so he'll delay his own track call. He's sitting there hoping, but every time that trigger gets touched, he's just restarting that counter. It's like, dude, let go of the trigger, and then you won't be watching everybody race around the track for a minute straight.
Is there anything on Arc Pro that is comparable?
I haven't done a whole lot of playing with the Arc Pro from a real racing standpoint. So
not in my experience. I don't think there's anything in there for automatic track calls. In fact,
it should be able to.
Yes, there is a track call button that you can set up on the screen and tap the screen, but you don't want that happening with 6 drivers around the track. You can't get the screen close enough.
Yeah. I think there was some way that you could do it through the controller, reading the manual, but I haven't found it. I just saw it yesterday, so I'm not sure. But I would like to find out about that, because if you could do a track call from your controller, that would simulate the automatic track call.
Yeah, if anything, Magic might do it, or the Magic
Yeah,
app.
Scalextric certainly won't. Magic might do it. I'm not a fan of track calls. You know what Luff would say here? Luff would say, "We race crash and burn."
And we tried that. We tried crash and burn, but that was way too harsh for digital racing. Then we tried crash and burn, where everybody had a token that they would use until they ran out of tokens. But now we just have heavy penalties for crashing, and you know, it just like it. You're not going to win the race if you crash a lot, right? Either because you're so far behind, or you have to go into the pit lane to repair your damage, which is another feature of RCS 64. You're going to lose the race. So you could at least be traffic for the other guys, or you still get to have fun rather than just stand around, because we had times when we had limited crashes where, you know, it'd be like just 1 or 2 guys driving around for the second half of the entire race, because
that's so fun.
It just
Do
takes.
you not get enough members attending your series that you can actually live marshal?
It's rare. There were 1 or 2 occasions for my club that we had enough people that we had a full 6 cars on the track and enough people to pull cars, you know, put cars back on the track. The problem is that, you know, although we have these spacious American homes, most of the tracks are in garages and such, and most of the tracks are as large as they can be made. For example, my track right here, the only way to, you know, there's like 1.5 foot of space between this end and the garage door. There's a you know, 1 foot or 2 of space between this side and a bunch of shelves over here. You know, there's enough space for 1 person to get around, right? But not enough if somebody's standing at the yellow station, nobody's going to get behind them, right? So you would have to have enough marshals to be stationed at all the appropriate points, which basically means double the number of people that would be racing to marshal. Otherwise, somebody's going to get their car marshaled quickly and somebody's not going to get their car marshaled at all. And so unless we have enough people to actually cover every corner without having to squeeze behind other people who are racing, we just use track calls. We've given in to the necessity of track calls. But I'll tell you what, I fully agree that when a race is fully marshaled, that it's a wonderful thing not to have to stop at every crash.
Yeah.
But unless you have enough marshals, you know, and most of us don't have enough space to have 1 or 2 marshals running around the track to pick up various crashes. Yeah, so that's the perennial challenge. I mean, it's hard enough getting an analog club with that many people, let alone a digital one.
I have another digital question. I'm sorry to carry on just with yourself, Greg, but
please.
How long does it take for someone to learn to deal with all the features that you turn on in RCS 64? Tire wear, fuel usage, crash damage, going to the pits for this, that, and the other. I've used fuel in my experience of Scalextric Sport Digital and the Magic app, but beyond fuel, nothing else yet. No weather.
So to answer your question, a piece of string is very long. I mean, it depends on the person, right? I've had people come in and just boom, they're like, that button, okay, that's the button, and they know that button and they know what it does after the first time I told them, or the second or third time. But I've had some of the guys that raced with my digital club for the last 10 years still have problems making, you know, the right move at the right time in order to do things efficiently. They know what it is.
In my experience, it's an advanced technique just to take a quick glance every 5 laps at how you're doing at your fuel level. Anything beyond that, and I can't comprehend actually being able to do it.
And that's where the track calls actually come in handy, is you know, being able to take a breath and double check your stats. But also the computer will tell you, you know, every once in a while it'll say, driver 3, low on fuel, right? And so, okay, I'm driver 3, I'm low on fuel. I'll go ahead and pull in or take a closer look during the next track call.
And the Magic Arc app does that too, but I've never turned on weather. We've never turned on tire wear because it just feels as though it's going to get very complicated very quickly. And
I mean, with the Arc, I haven't played with Magic app for a while, so maybe things have improved. The Scalextric Arc app, it was pretty much contrived, right? They're all gonna happen at the same rate, no matter how fast anybody is driving. It's based on lap number, not even lap time, right? So you get a lap, you lose a certain amount of fuel, you wear a certain amount of tire, or whatever, and the weather doesn't really have any impact on things because you just pull into the pit lane and it does what it does. With RCX64, these things have real impact. You know, if the track is wet and you're on hard tires, you're going to have terrible acceleration and terrible braking. You know, they're going to wear faster, they're going to wear at the wrong rates if you're using the wrong kind of tires on certain track conditions. All of these things have actual impact on the performance of your car. But sometimes we'll just have a simple race where we turn all the features off because it's a lot easier to just enjoy. You know, you just want to race, right? You don't want to have to deal with all that. And sometimes we do that because we have a new racer, or you know, some of the racers are just kind of frustrated with the complexity of things, or you know, don't like to have to deal with the fact that their car is not driving optimally because they're not using the right kind of tires for the current track conditions. But sometimes we go all in and just say, you know, look, this is real, this is a simulation, and so you need to deal with it, and and you learn, you jump in the deep end and learn.
To answer his earlier question, it took me about one or two races and to get the fuel down, and we've started adjusting the tank levels in RCS 64 so that you can decide how big your tank is going to be, and that changes how your lap times are affected.
Yeah, we get that. We do that with Magic
really well.
Yeah, we've done that simulated weight thing with the Magic app.
Yeah, I know the Magic has gotten a lot better, and it's definitely the go-to. I would not ever recommend the Scalextric Arc app to anybody who isn't, you know, under the Christmas tree racing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I need to take a closer look at the improvements that the Magic Arc app has made in recent times. But you know, there is a limitation
The last race we ran with Magic Arc was a 4-hour endurance race in February 20. And it's worked well for us twice with a full entry of 6 cars with 12 drivers. And we only turn on fuel and fuel weight simulation. And to be honest, even in the very first endurance we ran that way, people managed to get with it. But most cases there was a teammate on a marshalling point able to take a look at the screen and report to the driver, you're going to need fuel within 2 laps. Even though the software calls it out at about 10% fuel tank, I think it was, which was way too early to be stopping for fuel. So you always had to run past the warning if you were going to optimize on your fuel tank.
You can adjust the amount of the warning.
Yes, and I believe that because it was the first race we'd done with the system, we left it pretty well alone. We did make a couple of little adjustments for the second, and we've actually run 3 of them now. I tell a lie. We ran 2 on consecutive days, but for different entry fields. So the 2-day one we did was an enduro for 4 hour, followed by another one for beginners, which was 3 hour, and we ran the system the same way. But it's great fun, and I'd like to have a go with RCS 64. I don't know whether or not we're going to be able to get at that with our Arc Pro.
You can't. It only works with the
Laptops.
Previous this C7042 base. It does not work on the Arc Pro base. Pretty much your only options for Arc Pro are Scalextric or Magic. That's it. And there are some limitations to the way that the technology works. The reason the APB, the C7042 base works so well is because it becomes a slave to the computer. Like, all it does is pass controller information to the computer, and car information, car control information back to the base. That's all it does. It is a dummy slave with nothing. And the computer is doing all the work. With the Arc Pro, the Arc base is doing all the work, and then periodically sending information to your race manager through Bluetooth. So, all the timing, everything that's timing sensitive happens in the Arc Pro base, and the Bluetooth stuff happens more slowly. So it can't do things like real-time throttle manipulation through the race management app. It's doing throttle curve, presets, and it might change your throttle curve, for your weight simulation or your top speed level. But it can't do the things like RCS 64 does, where it delays the activation of your throttle because you're using the wrong tires, or it delays the activation of your brakes because you're using the wrong tires. And in addition to the weight simulation and stuff like that, it can't do it because it doesn't have the real time sensitive control over those things because of the Bluetooth low energy limitations. And every time somebody asks, can we get this kind of thing that is in RCX 64 in Magic will come on and say, nope, not going to happen.
And is it still a real race with driving skill, or is it an almost entirely strategic skill by the time you've got all of that on?
Yeah, absolutely both. I mean, because you need to know, you need to use the strategy to put the right tires on the car and to have the right amount of fuel, but you still got to stay ahead of the other guys and not crash all the time. I've mentioned on other shows that there's one or two other guys that I am competitive with in the digital club, and I basically just gotta hope that they come off the track more often than me, or I happen to make a slightly better decision strategy wise. They both come. You can't ignore either one of them and hope that you're going to win based on just one of those things. One of the guys he's a really consistent racer, but he's not especially fast. But he very rarely crashes unless somebody else crashed him off. And so he almost never loses distance, to other people from crashing. But because he's so conservative, he also conserves fuel. And so his driving strategy helps his strategy to do fairly well. And he usually is in the middle of the pack, and he's won a few races, even though he's not the fastest racer, because his driving style helps his fuel consumption and other things like that. But everybody else, they go hand in hand. You can't win with just one of them. Did I answer your question? I think I did.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah, I'd agree. That's one of the reasons I'm looking for the controllers for the 7042 power base.
Yeah.
It's because I want to do both. I've got the Arc Pro. I have the fortunate ability to have two tracks in my garage, so I can use one for RCS 64 and one for Arc Pro. So it's
and you probably know more about Arc Pro, race management than I do at this point, if you've been using it. Probably.
I just started using it because the other two guys that came over last week, I used it for tests, and I have used it for 6 cars, and I've had 4 kids. I actually turned a couple of kids from out of state onto doing slot cars, which they have continued as a result of racing on Arc Pro. So,
and the reason I don't use it all that much is because it's primarily on my portable track, and I haven't used that pretty much the entire last year. But and so when I do use it, it's pretty much just lap counting, and stuff like that. So I don't dive into the features. I mean, every time I think about what I would have to do to this track to get an Arc Pro in there, I don't have any good reason to do that much work. So I don't. So yeah, one of these days I just need to put an Arc Pro on a little loop and just go through all the features that I can dig up for it. see,
Or travel
see what the
over to
state of it
Wenatchee.
is. What was that?
Or travel over to Wenatchee and we can
You know,
play.
that's a day trip. You know, maybe once things are back to normal, we'll come over. I'll come over for a day trip race. Set something up on a Saturday and barbecue. I'll be there.
Sure.
Speaking of barbecue, I'm just looking outside of every time a car comes past my living room window, I get a sneak peek of how much snow there is on top of my wall. At 7 o'clock, when we started the chat, it was raining, and now it's about 2 or 3 inches deep in fresh, thick snowflakes.
And some down here.
Are you getting it too?
No, we just got rain and wind.
Yeah, well, there's flood alerts and all sorts of things all over the Midlands, and I think Stevens area might be really, really wet, but it's just turned to snow over here.
Somerset, nothing, just wind and rain.
All right. Well, now we're talking about weather on a slot car chat. Come on.
Going back to what you were saying about marshalling, Greg, it takes 6 people to marshal my track.
Yeah. So you've got to, and how many lanes is your track?
4.
So you got to have 10 people to do a fully marshaled race. Do you have 10 people on a regular basis?
There's only been a few people who actually raced on it, because at the moment it's my own personal. That's why I got grandkids.
Yeah.
Give them. They're good at putting cars back in. But there's a couple of clubs that want to have a go on it, but I don't know yet. See how this thing pans out.
I don't know a slot racer who doesn't like to pull the trigger on a new track, so I'm sure you'll get somebody coming around to have some fun once you put the offer out there.
There's 3 clubs in this area.
Nice.
2 of them I race for, and the other one's a digital club. And they've invited me over there, but digital frightens me.
Well, we're coming down to our last few minutes. Does anybody have any other topics or questions or show and tell? Or
I'm sorry to take the mic again, but I did say I'd get back to you with the Interlagos information.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Martin asked, so I'm going to do another screen share.
Yep.
And this time it was my web browser, and this time I was still there. It was Wikipedia Interlagos page, and these look like the images that I was showing you earlier, and it looks like it was shortened in 1990, and I didn't realize it was that late. So I had a look at Google Maps and found the circuit, and it looks like most of the original circuit is actually still visible. You can see these would be service roads now, but that would be the original lap. And you can even see where this omega shape circuit, they came up one side and back down the other, didn't they? They came around here, didn't they? And they went around there, back behind the old, what is the pit now?
Yeah, the beginning of Yunko is at the top left of the lake, look.
Yes, and that's been lost. Like I said, it would have been out there, would it not?
Yeah.
I didn't know it had got like things like this chicane in it, which obviously F1 don't use, but you can see, look at all the old options. Look at this one. This and this one are the 2 great corners that I remember from watching it on TV. Yeah,
big hills and the exits.
Yeah, that's right. Up and down. It's steep down off of this one, isn't it? But yeah, there you go. That's just what I did. And you can see most of it is actually still there.
Have a look at the street names to the left, though. Avenue Carlos Pache and all that.
Well, the circuit's called Autodromo Carlos Pache.
Yeah.
It says Interlagos Circuit there, but it's actually called the Autodromo Carlos Pache, and he was the winning Brazilian driver back in the day, was he not?
Yeah, quite something. Didn't he win Targa Florio?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know where.
Big races, but yeah, they had quite a gap there, didn't they? It was quite a few years they didn't race at Interlagos.
Just as an FYI, Martin and Wayne, the big part of the reason that far loop or the long second straight was taken out.
That would be this one.
The other end.
Oh, this. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just in between. That's all very marshy in there. And they had a real big problem with the track settling and rising. And it was a lot of maintenance down in the Adib Kaseb corner down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it's on the floodplain, isn't it?
This marshy pond was causing all kinds of crap with the track surface.
Ah, right.
Well, Interlagos translates to into lakes, doesn't it? So that's why it's called it between the lakes.
All the lakes are all around. They're all over the place, just outside the boundaries of the track.
Yeah.
Ah.
Make a good slot car track.
Oh yeah, and it's the lowest point down there as well, isn't it? Estachio, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Well, and the river would sometimes, depending on the season, depending on the rainy season. When I was there, the river was high, and all that corner was almost underwater.
Wow.
Anyway,
oh, fascinating. Cheers.
That was just a look back, and as we're coming towards the 2 hour, I thought I'd better get that in before we finished. Stop share.
There we go. You found it this time.
I found it this time. The controls disappear off the top of the screen.
Yep. All right. Well, does anybody have any last minute things for the end of the recording, or should I go ahead and sign out and hit the stop button and let you guys just chit chat?
One thing for Paul.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just ran downstairs and did a quick check. The RT3 scale autopod will not fit the Thunder Slot chassis plate without work, and I suspect the work involved you probably wouldn't want to do. So you're sort of stuck with the Thunder Slot pods, although is your track a wood track or a plastic track?
Wood.
Okay. There are some things that are cheap and cheerful and quick fixes you can do to fix the Thunder Slot pod and make it a lot better. I do have a few pictures, but if anyone, I can do, if you hang around for a couple of minutes after we stop, or unless anybody wants to show stuff before they buzz off.
I'd like go ahead and show it now.
Okay. What you want to do, I'll show you a couple here. The big issue with, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. The big issue with a lot of the motor, can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Is that moving around? Okay. The big issue with a lot of rear ends on slot cars, whether it's scale electric or slotted, or I don't care who makes it, this whole area in here, these uprights are fairly flimsy. So on a wood track that has higher lateral grip, stickier tires, stronger motors, these two uprights can slightly deflect. They can bend independently of each other. And when they do, if your bushings are glued in, that can cause some misalignment in the bushings, which binds the axle, causes gear meshes issues, and all kinds of stuff. So what you want to do is make, in any slot car, you want to make the triangle form. This is where the pinion would be. You want to make the triangle formed by the pinion and the two rear bushings absolutely as stiff as possible. If you could machine that out of titanium, it'd be great. But you can't, and they produce them out of plastic and all the rest of the stuff. So this is a couple of picture thing here. Hang on. If you, is that up? No, not yet. Hang on. That up?
Yeah.
Okay. I just make a simple little U shape out of, you can use some 055 wire, piano wire. And then what we do is, No good?
Yep.
Okay, Greg, I've got screen sharing has stopped as the shared window is closed. What does that mean?
I don't know, but we're still looking at the back of a pod.
Oh, can you see my cursor?
Yep.
Oh, okay, sorry guys. So I've taken that U-shaped piece of piano wire, and this is a really crummy photo, but the legs extend down here and touch the base of this magnet pod bracket. Then I just glue these in. It's critical to make this width as snug as possible on the axle uprights here. Glue that in. Now this ties the whole rear end together. In terms of the bushing uprights, they will not flex. And I see guys gluing bits of stuff from the motor and styrene tubes and all kinds of stuff. This is just a little more elegant way to do it, and it works well. So you can do this and variations on a theme. You can do this with Ninko cars, Scale Electrics, slotted, anything.
Good stuff.
If I could just quickly say that to Mike, that Thunderslot also make two stiffer pods.
They do. That's the stiffest one, Dan.
That's the stiffest, is it? Oh, okay.
That's the stiffest, and it's like spaghetti.
Yes, it's just impossible. The whole car just twists so much. It's really difficult.
I often wonder why the manufacturers offer pods in various materials. What's the benefit or otherwise of the pods twisting when it's meant to be disconnected from the chassis base plate by its mountings? There's no benefit in flexing the pod, is there?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, but will not stop Chris answering that question. But for now, everybody go ahead and wave bye-bye on episode number 40, and we'll see everybody again next week. Bye.